What's going on, guys? Hopefully you guys are having a great night. Had a little bit of a Wi-Fi connection here before the Twitter Spaces. Only about 5, 6, 7 minutes late, but they're just doing introductions right now. So hopefully you guys enjoy, and it's a good AMA tonight. We had a Steve Ehrlich on last week, so you never know who's going to pop up. Thanks for watching, guys, and hope to leave some comments below if you guys like it.
Charting section. We do focus on VGX and Bitcoin, but we've got a lot of other participants who will share some charts from time to time. So if you are interested in charting or just want to come in and have a good time, we'd love to see you.
Yeah, great piggyback on that. If you like that. But yeah, the Discord, it's in my bio, Floki's VGX Hero Twitter page. We have a lot of different channels in there, and we broke it down into a lot of different categories to make it easy. So we got your Voyager talk, your other coins, NFTs, shorting, equities. We have a little bit of everything, and we're trying to integrate some cool stuff into that Discord. So definitely check it out. Once again, appreciate everybody. Follow the VGX Hero or VGX_Heroes Twitter page. We're trying to push, all big announcements and things like that through there. This is going to be posted on Crypto Airborne's YouTube after. So if you miss anything, want to rewatch or anything like that, definitely check that out. Thanks everybody for being in here. If you could tweet out one more time, if you don't mind, anybody that hasn't tweeted, it'd be greatly appreciated. And we can get to it. So, Frank, if you want to go ahead and start off with like kind of the market, or not market, but weekly recap, different stories that come up you found interesting.
Yeah, sure. I mean, as we some suspected, found that inflation isn't that transitory. That's kind of been let out of the bag. Some of the run up in Bitcoin has been due to this. Some other things that have kind of fallen under the radar is surprise, surprise. Congress is at a standstill with the infrastructure bill, which is another actual good thing for crypto, given its there's certain sections in it that aren't so kind to the crypto universe with regards to KYC and such. But other big news, kind of idiosyncratic things. Polkadot is looking to have auctions begin next month, which has gotten a big run up in its price today, about 20%, close to its all-time high. So those are the big things, overarching things. I mean, our favorite token here, VGX, seems like they they got some Europe in play, so that provided a little bit of a pump. So I think overall, all seasons in full bloom right now.
Yeah, appreciate that. Bitcoin, I just saw, hit its highest high since May 10th. It broke 58K. For anybody that's not looking at the price, that's something to be excited about. Head in the right direction. But anything else for you? Or is that about it you got for us?
That's about it for right now. We can dive deeper into specifics if anyone has questions. But those are the kind of things that I saw. I mean, if we're going into the rabbit hole, I saw that there's more Bitcoin taken off of exchanges, which produced a little bit more positive news for the price.
Yeah, that on-chain stuff's very bullish. I love keeping up with that, and just how low supply is on exchanges. Super fascinating how it correlates the price.
Yeah, I think it's about 5.5 million Bitcoins on exchange, which has been the lowest in quite a bit of time. So
Yeah, and another metric that always fascinates me is on-chain is, I believe it's 75% of all Bitcoin hasn't moved in over a year. So basically all this short-term trading and stuff, it's, most of the Bitcoin doesn't ever move and it's being hodled. So the concept of, shrinking supply is definitely fascinating. And, I think you'll see the results of that. But moving on over to Michael. So a conversation that came up this week was kind of over dust and just the whole concept of that, and transfers, buy, sell. So if you want to get into that, Michael, or Crypto Daddy Pig.
Yeah, so I think that it's a good topic to cover. We covered it a good bit in the Discord because it started as, I think, an overblown concern that was raised on Twitter. They kind of bled over to the Discord, and people especially noticed it when it came to Luna in the app. So what basically started the conversation was somebody bought like $11 in Luna and then turned around and sold it and sold their entire position and only got like $9 back. And they were trying to figure out if they were losing, this exorbitant percentage of their trade every time that they traded Luna, for example. And the ultimate answer is no. There's a concept called dust that I think that everyone should understand, and it's basically the smallest increment that's actually transactable within any given account. And it's common across a number of exchanges. You can end up with dust in Voyager or BlockFi or Gemini or really any of them. So Luna, I think, is just a place where it came into the spotlight because it is truncated at the 10th place. So if you buy, 10 Luna and then get interest payments on it, and you get 10.xxxxx, several decimal places out, your app is only going to reflect the 10th place. So when you go to sell and transact, you're only selling up to the 10th place, and then everything after that is truncated. But that is not a phenomenon that is repeating on every single trade. You're not losing any of that asset. If you were to get your CSV file that you get for your taxes and look on there, the entirety of your position is reflected on there. So those increments past the decimal place are not lost. They're not taken. They're not gone. If you were to continue and buy and trade and make repeated trades in and out of a certain position, you're never going to have a non-transactable amount larger than 0.9 repeating of one place to the right of wherever the position has been truncated. So different assets go out a different number of decimal places. That also changes as the assets go up. So we were talking about this a little bit earlier on a separate call, and Floki brought up the point that, like with Luna, one decimal place going out to the 10th place made a lot of sense when Luna was a $4 asset, but it's 10x from there. And I would expect that those are things that get revisited. I've even seen it within the past week. I saw DOT go from 2 decimal places to the 100th place. Now it's out to 3 decimal places to the 1000th place. So just to give everybody the peace of mind, and I'd be happy to walk through the math, or if you're on the Discord, I walked everybody through the math earlier in the week to kind of show mathematical proof that those assets to the right of that last decimal place before it gets truncated are not gone. They do add back in if you buy more of the position. So, like for example, if you had 25 Luna and after an interest payment you had 25.15 and you sold out of your entire position, you would only be able to sell the 25.1 because you can't put a sell order in for the 100th place of the decimal. And your account will not show Luna anymore. It'll show as if you have none, but your CSV file will still show the full position that you had. So if you in the future then bought another 25 Luna, right, and then got interest payments on that to the point where that 25 Luna yielded you 25.15 again, well, the 25.15 would have that 0.05 of dust that was lingering in your account added to it, and it would reflect in your account at that point at 25.2, and you'd be able to transact and exit. So the long and the short of it is you'd never be out more than, on an asset that goes out to the 10th place like Luna, you'd never be out more than 0.09 repeating of that asset. On something that goes out to the 100th place in app, you'd never have more non-transactable dust than 0.009 repeating, and so on and so forth. So there are a number of assets that truncate at the 10th place. Cardano is another one that comes to mind, but everyone should probably be somewhat familiar with this concept. Just if you pay close enough attention to your push notifications when you get interest at the beginning of each month, your push notifications go out an exorbitant number of decimal places. However, when you actually pull up the app and you look at the transfers or the order history, or look at the actual transaction that paid you that interest, those reflect a truncated number at, for Cardano, the 10th place, for Luna, the 10th place, for Dot, the 100th place, which I think Dot just went to the 1,000th place, actually. But there's always been this disparity between the actual full position and what is reflected in app. And I can't speak as to the logic behind it, or when they change it, how frequently they change it, or when they extend it, but I can tell you that I have seen it extended out, because when I started this research earlier in the week when the conversation first came up, in real time, I saw Dot go from carried out to the 100th place to carried out to the 1,000th place. And I would assume that would just continue to reflect, that would continue to happen. It's probably an iteration that they do with whatever logic they have behind it. So those pieces of dust that you may have in your account are not getting aggregated. They're not going to continue to, it's not like every time you trade, it's a complete fallacy to say that every time I trade this asset, I'm losing this, because I'm losing it forever. You're not losing it forever. And if you truly are a trader trading in and out of the same asset constantly, all those pieces of dust eventually just aggregate and then round up to the next decimal place that is reflected in that. And this is completely common. This is nothing that is nearly to the extent that I had seen it blown out of proportion by a number of people, especially on Twitter, and especially by some people that, let's just say, should have known better, to put it nicely. But this is not a big catastrophe. This is not a big problem. This is not something where you've got to worry about losing 10% of your asset every time you trade. It's nowhere near to that extent. It was one very inopportune example of a $10 trade on an asset that only goes to the 10th place. That is really not. It becomes a rounding error either if you make those trades in that tiny amount in scale, like for example, if you use Roundly X and you get a ton of these little micro transactions, it's not like you're losing everything past a certain decimal place on all your Roundly X transactions. They're just going to aggregate, and then at some point, when they're all added up, everything to the right of that last place that they show you in app just doesn't get shown in app. But if you want to check this theory for yourself, I would encourage everybody, go ahead and request your tax document, go ahead and request your CSV, and take a look. You'll see that on that CSV, everything's carried out to the fullest extent of the decimal places that you own the asset. So it's just a little bit of a sanity check for everybody that maybe had been wondering how that works, and just to give everybody peace of mind. That's basically the math behind it, and it is something that I have seen them update in real time. So I would anticipate that how far out a position is decimalated is a variable that they are changing to reflect the price movement in the asset itself.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's good clarification for a lot of people, because not all of us are as smart as you and go through all the minute parts. But I appreciate that. But Pablo, what's going on, my guy? How are you? You hear us, Pablo?
Oh, mic is on. I'm here, guys. How are you?
There you go.
Thank you
How
for
are you?
good, man. Good to check in. Appreciate what you guys do, and thank you for clarifying. I mean, I saw the FUD that was going around when they were concerned about that I guess the truncation of asset, and I appreciate you clarifying that. It's really frustrating when somebody doesn't know something, and instead of truly asking the question, like so many people are just so quick to be like, oh, we're getting ripped off. It's just, this isn't right. Oh, I've sent so many emails in and never got the request. Like, that's what makes this community strong, is like, just because we don't understand something doesn't mean it's fraud, or it doesn't mean that the company's not working the way it should. It's like, that's what makes the community strong, is hey, put it out there, a general question is, hey, I don't understand this. Let's not be quick to point fingers and say something's jacked up.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think that the question is completely valid. I have no problem with the question initially being raised. My frustration was out of how quickly it was amplified by voices that could have taken a pause and found a more constructive way of finding the answer. But I think the question itself is very valid, and especially if you're new to the space, or if you're heavily concentrated in an asset that does truncate at a very narrow position after the decimal. It's a completely valid question to understand, and it takes some math to kind of work your way through it to go, all right, I got the peace of mind, I get how this works now. So it's not necessarily intuitive, and I wouldn't have an issue with the question being raised had it been just the question being raised and not, just another reason to grandstand about issues.
Absolutely, I agree 100%.
Yeah, but I appreciate you hopping up here, Pablo.
I appreciate being here, man. Just crossed 31K in VGX. I almost pulled the trigger a couple more times, bought a few more K shares, but I'm like, dude, this is just getting silly. So.
Hey, I saw that. Congratulations, my guy. Hey, you a year from now, you'll be like, damn, I should have bought that extra 1,000. But
yeah, you know what? I just got to realize that this isn't a, this is a marathon. This isn't a 5K race, and I've got nothing but time, so that's why I really don't care about the fluctuation in price. I'm just going to make it my goal to keep adding and keep stacking, and you know what? One of these days, buying VGX will just be so ridiculously out of reach that I'll just stop adding to the bag. But until that day, I just keep adding, man.
That's the goal. But appreciate you as always. Let's see. I saw the conversation come up a good bit this week over taxes. So, Michael, if you want to kind of do your little spill on that.
You got me now? Sorry,
there you are, friend.
The bottom of my spaces was showing me my mic was on, and then the top was showing it was off. So all good now. But so the question that was raised earlier in the week was somebody had previously prepared their taxes using one lot method, and then potentially needed to change because they were going to start using TaxBit, and TaxBit either offers HIFO, LIFO, or FIFO, and we are not tax professionals, but the one just point that I would encourage everybody to recognize is that there's a benefit to being consistent. There's no right or wrong way to do it between LIFO, HIFO, or FIFO, but the thing that I have been made to understand along the way is that you don't want to change once you've picked one. So if you're unfamiliar, HIFO is highest in, first out, LIFO is last in, first out, and FIFO is first in, first out. So it's basically categorizing, let's say you buy 100 VGX every week forever, right? And then at some point in the future, God forbid, you go to sell it, right? Which I know we're not supposed to talk about. When you sell it, well, which VGX did you sell? The VGX that you bought at $7 in the spring, or the VGX that you bought at $2.50 today, or the VGX that you bought at 8 cents last year. That's going to determine whether it's a short-term capital gain or a long-term capital gain, depending on whether or not you held that asset for longer than a year. And then your cost base is going to be determined by which lot you're technically selling. So you just can't be opportunistic and choose whatever is better on a case-by-case basis. You kind of have to pick one mechanism and stick with it. And it's advised to not really switch between them even from year to year. So if you're going to stick with first in, first out, then you're always selling your oldest lot in that position. If you're going to do with last in, first out, then you're always selling your most recent lot in that position. And if you're going to do highest in, first out, then you're always selling the lot in that position that you paid the most for, whatever you have the highest cost basis from. And there are pros and cons to each mechanism, and it's going to be on a case-by-case basis as to what benefits you or works against you. Some things to consider, and like I said, we're not providing tax advice, but just some things that if I were in that position that I would consider would be: one, what is my adjusted gross income for the year, irrespective of these transactions, to determine what my short-term tax bracket would be if it were to be categorized as ordinary income or taxed at my ordinary income rate. If I have a very low income to the point where my short-term gains and my long-term gains are kind of indistinguishable from one another, then I don't know that it's necessarily as much of a important decision. If I have a very high income and the difference between short-term gains and long-term gains could be 20+% or 20%, then I think it becomes an incredibly important decision. Do you want highest in, first out, so that you're always paying tax on the smallest delta? But then what if you have some assets that would then be taxed as a short-term gain when you could have otherwise gone with a long-term gain on a higher delta, And this is where it all gets very convoluted, and it's very much a case-by-case basis, but you should understand what the variables are. What is the delta between your cost basis and what you sold at? What is your tax bracket if it were to be categorized as short-term cap gains? And what is the time frame between when you bought these lots? So if everything in your portfolio is a long-term cap gain because you've had it since 2017, it's a much easier decision because none of it, you're not going to make a mistake that's going to accidentally book something as a short-term gain. Likewise, if you bought everything within the last 6 months and you plan on selling, by the end of the year because you don't think the bull run's going to last, then everything's going to be a short-term gain for you. And in that regard, it really doesn't matter. So these are just some of the variables that you should be taking into consideration when choosing your allotment method.
Thank you as always.
Yeah, I would add, just know your tax bracket levels and how close you are to them. I think if you're on borderline different income tax or tax areas, it's really, really, really important because you could potentially just slip under there and pay less gains on your gains. So
Definitely. So even though this is like, as much as I like, business math, I'm not an accounting guy. So, I appreciate all the information I can get on the topic, honestly. But I appreciate that as always. Once again, feel free. Anybody's welcome to come up here and ask any questions. If you have any questions that, maybe you don't want to throw in the Twitter world because it's kind of ferocious out there sometimes. It's a judgment-free area, happy to answer anything, but we'll keep it moving. And, while we're on that topic, might as well hop into the, if you got any new OPSEC or, any self-custody or anything along those lines you want to touch on tonight, Michael or Frankie?
Yeah, so just briefly on OPSEC as to why we talk about it so much, and by we I mean me, and why I keep beating that drum. We didn't get to it last week because we had a special guest that came and that kind of shifted gears, but we wanted to talk about what was still fresh, but that Facebook issue that happened with the DNS hack and the potentially 4 billion people's worth of data that were compromised. The reason why we talk OPSEC, the reason why we talk about using a password manager and using high entropy randomized passwords that are unique to each account is because, I'm sure at some point in everybody's past, you've had a password that's like words that matter to you or things that, just think of how many people based on their Facebook profiles have now had their dates of birth, families' maiden names, loved ones' names, pets' names, birth dates of their children, all of these things that tend to make their way into some of the more basic passwords that people use because they're easy to remember, have all been completely compromised. And all it takes is, one brute force attack where all that information gets put into something with an AI backend to sit there and just brute force their way into guessing passwords. And a lot of people's information could very well be compromised in the fallout from that Facebook hack. So we're not like paranoid of Mr. Robot trying to end the world, but these things happen in real life. Like it's not like, oh, well, somebody's going to walk past me and hack my phone or this. It's not going to be that attack vector. It's going to be something stupid. It's going to be something that you use for convenience. It's going to be something that everybody uses. The Ledger hacks, nobody hacked the Ledger devices. People hacked the Ledger mailing list and the Ledger customer records. And then they were able to get in touch with people, and then they just benefited from the most gullible or the most uninformed. It's not even that you necessarily would have to be gullible. You should just be trusting and not and I would say naive, but not in a negative way, like you did anything wrong. But if you get something that looks like it's from Ledger, it should be from Ledger, and you know that you bought a Ledger. So why would you think that it's from anybody but Ledger? Meanwhile, it's a phishing attack because someone didn't hack Ledger's devices; they hacked their data. So these are the attack vectors that we try to protect ourselves from by having, unique, high entropy, randomized passwords for every different account. For using two-factor authentication, for eliminating SMS authentication from every account that you could possibly have. And I know that we beat this dead horse, but constantly the news cycle just tells you more and more reasons why these are things that you should be practicing, privacy best practices and understanding better. And I even saw Voyager put out a blog post or a little kind of one-hitter, I think today, that I was very happy to see. So they're encouraging people kind of along the same lines. And I think that it's important that everybody understand what their risks are, where they could potentially be exposed, and that there is sometimes some crossover where you're like, oh, well, I've got all of these accounts protected, and then all these other bullshit ones don't matter. Well, the bullshit ones tend to be the ones that are easier for them to get their hands on, and then that data is actionable for them to use it in a different way. So this is the nature of the beast, and this is why we preach OPSEC as much as we do.
Definitely. So great points. We got Pablo, then Goro, then Ross. So Pablo, anything to add to that, or have anything you wanted to ask?
Yeah, you know what? I just wanted to say thank you for sharing that, because I had no idea. We were talking about Voyager and things that they could do on their end to just, security wise. And I sent them an email after, I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago. And I just said, hey, I'd like to lock my account up. I don't watch it all the time. And I've definitely got enough money in there that, that I feel more comfortable at night knowing that my account is on lock and that I can add to my account, that I can't sell. And they said that, yeah, no problem. We can deactivate you can't sell any of your VGX or whatever you got in a stable coin, or obviously you can sell your stable coin, but you can't sell your positions and then transfer money out unless you reach back out to us. And we're going to request some forms of ID at that point. But yeah, your account is on lock, and you can transfer money in, you can buy stuff, but you just can't sell. And I felt really good about that, considering that I'm not going to be selling any of my positions anytime soon. I'm only adding. It made me sleep better at night, and that was a tribute to you guys sharing the information that you do on here, because I didn't even know that was available.
Definitely so. And for anybody that doesn't know, that's a great thing. Just a second, Floki. That's a great thing to do if it's truly money you do not need. You have plenty of money, and whatever the reason, it's just pure investment. It's a great thing to look into. But go ahead, Floki.
I was going to ask, two separate levels of protection. There's protection from selling, and then transfers / withdrawal. So you're saying you're preventing you from selling. It's not just withdrawal or transfer.
I haven't personally done it. I haven't gotten.
I went the full way. I had it locked down to where I can't sell anything and I can't transfer money out. But I'm sure that if you reach out to Voyager, if that's something that you're concerned about doing, like you want the ability to sell but not transfer out. It sounded like in the email that they had that function because they wanted me to clarify what my intentions were. And I don't want to sell. I'm not a flipper. I don't want to deal with the tax consequences of short-term capital gains. And I didn't want anybody to transfer any money out of my account, so I just put it on lock. I can only transfer, and I can't do anything else other than transfer in and buy. I can't sell, and I can't transfer money out. And then that's what just made sense for me, because I don't need the money. I truly am only accumulating, and so if that's something you're interested in, I definitely would reach out to Voyager.
Yeah, the reason why I just wanted to highlight it. Really, I know we have traders and we have investors in this group, but it was the first time I've heard the distinction between preventing from selling versus withdrawal or transfer. So everyone can choose. I guess that's really cool. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, definitely so. Frankie, you got something to add to that?
No, I just reiterate what Michael said with regards to just get a I think it's Bitwarden in the last pass, and you're basically ahead of the game by 80% of your peers or the population, because just by doing that simple randomized password and having it saved, I mean it's you can't imagine how many people just have a login 1 2 3 for their trading accounts. So it's a lot easier than you think. I don't want anyone to think that it's a harder thing to do. It's just sign up for one of those things and randomize your passwords, and again you're ahead of the game by 80%.
Thank you. Goro, you got something for us, my friend?
Yes, what's up, party people? Goro here. Once again, thanks guys for doing this. Always extremely informative. You guys are the best. Just wealth of information constantly. My question does kind of have to do with security, and I think we can kind of put this to rest after this. I know we talked about it last week, But in terms of the USDC, whether it's insured or not, I remember Steve talking about it last week, and he clarified, and I think he worded it as, it's not a traditional form of insurance that USDC is covered with. It's more of a self-insurance / balance sheet insurance. Just wondering if you guys could shed some light on what exactly that means, and I guess for my own knowledge and for my own ability to explain that to other people when I say, hey, 9%, and they ask me, hey, is that insured? What are some, I guess, what's an explanation of kind of what Steve was attempting to elaborate on last week?
It's a good question. So I'm hesitant to misspeak because I don't know the exact mechanism that they're using for self-insurance, but I would tell you a hypothetical. I've self-insured before in the aviation space, so I've self-insured aircraft, and essentially the way that it worked was instead of having to carry hull and liability insurance on an entire fleet of aircraft that can only crash one at a time in a hypothetical worst case scenario, right? Or maybe two at a time if two hit each other. The value of the remainder of the assets is more than sufficient to cover the liabilities that could be generated by one of them. So again, this is purely speculative. I do not know anything about the mechanism that they're talking about with any specificity, but I would think that one form of self-insurance that I would think would be viable would be USDC's failure itself. Like, let's say Circle or the actual asset USDC were to fail, they have enough assets in enough other baskets where their balance sheet could mitigate whatever risk they would have in any one asset. And again, I do not know that to be the actual mechanism, but that is just an example of how self-insurance could potentially work.
So when you talk about baskets, Mike, are you talking about like the hypothecation of other user funds at that point?
No, like I don't want to overstep here because I don't know the mechanism that they're using, but basically, like, even if USDC, even if all their assets in USDC were to be wiped, they still have enough other assets to cover probably that doomsday scenario. If any one asset were to fall in a way where there were liability that fell on them or something along those lines. I don't really want to go too far off book here because I don't know. But I'm just trying to compare a scenario that I know because I have self-insured before at a corporate level. But I'm not entirely sure how much that correlates to this type of an asset class.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Appreciate that, Michael. Ross, what's going on, friend? Sorry you hopped up here.
Hey, everybody. Hope everybody's having a great night. I just kind of wanted to jump off of what Mike was talking about with regards to some of the OPSEC, because I know a lot of it's kind of been oriented around the strength of your passwords and maintaining that. But I really want to stress to people that most of the hacks that occur, they're not like brute force attacks with computers. More often than not, it boils down to social hacking. And you see this a lot with a lot of the phishing attempts. Maybe you've seen people that have essentially taken over domain names that have very similar to like Coinbase.com or Invest Voyager, but there might be one or two letters off. This is something that's a real common technique that when they send out those phishing attempts, they're going to try to play on your psychology by trying to make you react before you fully think things through. And so they might, with some of these phishing attempts, they might try to incite some type of fear in that, like maybe your account's locked out or somebody is transferring funds. That's all part of their social hack to get you to drop your guard and in that moment, that fear response, immediately respond to that email, and then you end up completely oblivious to that one or two letters that might be off on the domain name that their email that might look legit sends you to. So regardless of how strong your passwords are, I would definitely stress to be more wary of the social hacking aspects and how that could compromise your accounts. Definitely, try to avoid using anything with like family members, pets, birthdays, things like that, obviously. But with the phishing attacks, they're going to get you, like I said, to drop your guard long enough to where you respond to it before you can actually rationally think through and carefully identify whether or not it's legit email. So I just kind of wanted to highlight that aspect because yes, the password managers are good and all that stuff, but at the end of the day, if you get on the line in a chat or something like that with somebody, they're going to play on your emotions to try to elicit whatever information that they might need to get that last bit of information to access your account. So just always remain on guard, um, you know, be responsible, and don't be lackadaisical. Even with some of your regular activities, always double check the websites that you're getting sent to, because some of these domains can get bought and they mimic everything down to the T. And so it's just real important to remain on guard. It's not just about your password.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point, and I think that OPSEC also that immediately makes me think of the next layer of the onion is that OPSEC's about a lot more than just you too, because those attack vectors that Ross just mentioned, in addition to every scenario that he just outlaid, one of the most successful ways that they get people is when they do get a full data set of all your contact info and all this other stuff. They don't go for you; they go for your spouse, and they introduce this urgency to your spouse that your spouse's assets are at risk unless you do this or that or put this password in. And that's the way they get people to compromise seed phrases, or they try to be predatory, assuming that the spouse is less well versed in the space than the user, and then the spouse in that panic and in that moment of feeling like they are saving the day and doing the right, ultimately does one thing that jeopardizes your entire OPSEC. So it's important to have this discussion with your loved ones or anyone that you trust that could potentially be an attack vector in your orbit as well. If you're married, obviously your spouse. If you have children, make sure that your children are fully fluent in your OPSEC. And that doesn't mean that you have to tell everyone your passwords, but you do have to make sure that everyone is at least aware of some of these rudimentary attack vectors that they could play a part in. This is all something, not to go back to the password manager thing again, but this is where end of life planning or legacy planning for your passwords comes into play too, where the password managers kind of help with that, because the password managers like LastPass or Bitwarden have these mechanisms built in where you can designate trusted contacts that can access your password vault in the event of your untimely death. And you set your own rules for what the mechanism is by which they can get those passwords. And to tie that into the social side of it, it's tantamount that you prepare those people for where they fit into your OPSEC scenario. So those people that may be your next of kin on your password vault also should be aware of exactly what it would be that they'd be inheriting. Even if you're not, if you've got kids that are under the age that you don't trust them with the assets yet, or everybody's financial dynamic and their relationships are different too. If you don't trust your spouse to necessarily have all the passwords, but if you drop dead, then sure, you would want them to have it so that it didn't go to nobody or it didn't just disappear. They should at least know what to expect as far as how some of these things work, how the password manager works, how your accounts work, what would be reasonable to expect, what would not be reasonable to expect. Like, one of my worst fears is that someone were to die and then their spouse falls victim to someone predatory that's like, oh, well, I could help you get into that account. I just give me this, that, this. And then, they divulge things because they didn't understand what they were. And this happens frequently where spouses will give seed phrases because they don't know what the hell a seed phrase is. And they think that it's some type of a proof of ID. And next thing you know, the entire account's been swept, or the entire wallet's been swept, and everything that person had worked hard to protect is now gone because their OPSEC died with them. These are things that are incredibly important that you educate the people closest to you on, so that you're not in that risk scenario.
I would want to reinforce it. I've been in corporate for a long time, and they just seems like every couple of months they make me do some training where they keep driving this one point home about these fishers. They're going to create some sort of emotional urgency. That's just key. If you see emotional urgency, that's your first red flag. I'm going to keep it real short. And then another thing is that an uppercase I looks the same as a lowercase L. So invest Voyager, just be mindful. I got a DM from Mike the Investa yesterday saying, "Hey, how's it going?" in the middle of the day, and it was a fake account. It was obvious, but it looked identical just because he replaced the I with the lowercase L. So that's just what I want to add. I appreciate you guys speaking to it.
Yeah, and I want to touch on it from the NFT side, since clearly from my feed, I'm pretty heavy in the NFT side. So the big scams in the NFT world is you'll get emails. So like on OpenSea, you have something, one of your NFTs, and you'll get an email with this ridiculously high bid on it that looks like an OpenSea email, and then you click on it, and then it opens up like a OpenSea, like a wallet connect, like connect your MetaMask, Trust Wallet, whatever, and then you do that and you're gone. Your stuff's wiped. They have access. So for people that are in the NFT world, always if you see an email about a crazy offer, only go to OpenSea to confirm or anything like that. You also they've kind of fixed it, or they've kind of made it a little better, but there's a big thing where people were sending Polygon NFTs, airdropping them to people, and when they would coordinate these emails with those specific to fish target you. And another and that's what it's supposed to do, but they're making fake accounts that look just like it, that people are going and connecting their wallets to these, and it's just giving access to scammers. So just always be safe out there. If something seems fishy or anything like that, never interact. If it takes you 10 minutes of double, triple, quadruple checking things, it's always worth it to not.
And right now, and you hit the link, and then they're asking you for other things, and it was a dead set identical website to what the Ledger website was at that point in time. So I reached out to Ledger on Twitter and said, "Hey, what's going on here?" And they responded back and they said, "We're never going to text you personally regarding this, that, and the other thing," and I didn't move another step forward. But I mean, and I don't know if this is right or wrong, and Michael, I'm sure you can speak to it right after I'm done talking, but my point would be is if they already got it, they already got it, and it's already gone. So I do think, my company trains us, and they send out phishing emails once a month to try to help us identify them and determine whether or not this is something real. Most of the time, they're blatantly obvious. But to what Floki said earlier, they are preying on that sense of urgency. But if they already got it, they probably already got it. So maybe reach out to somebody else in the community first before you go pressing that second button or that third button. And I'm pretty sure somebody on Twitter is going to respond to you fairly quickly. And, you know, we're trying to grow together. We're trying to learn together. We're trying to keep each other safe. That's part of what this VGX Heroes movement and this AMA is all about. So let's reach out to each other and make sure that we're doing the right thing.
Yeah, so, you know, you got me wanting to just go through one other OPSEC matter or just best practices. Speaking of Ledger and just hardware wallets in general, or anything in the space in general, if you're looking at hardware wallets, or if you're looking at Open Dimes, for example, or anything from CoinKite or Ledger or Trezor, it is of absolute importance that you get them directly from the source. And I don't know how obvious that is to most people. I know that Amazon sells these things, and I know that Amazon may be cheaper, but $10 cheaper on a Ledger is not worth actually losing everything that you put on that device. Here is what your problem is. If you get from Amazon or from a third-party seller, or God forbid you get it on eBay or used or secondhand, I think you can just wipe it. You know, you don't know if that device has been tampered with. I've heard in the last month at meetups stories from 5-6 people that bought ledgers on Amazon and received them pre-initialized with the seed phrase already filled out and the words written down. And to somebody that doesn't know how to use a hardware device or has never seen one before, you might think that that's a convenience for you, and that's just how it works. But it's not how it works. And what that means is that someone actually compromised the supply chain to get that device to you pre-initialized, and they have a copy of that seed phrase. And they'll just sit there and they'll wait for you to actually put assets on that on that wallet, and then they'll drain it. They'll sweep it. You know, this happens all the time, and people don't recognize the risk because, you know, a lot of times it's if you're inclined to buy something like a Ledger on Amazon, it's probably your first device in the space. It's probably the first time you've ever seen one. You've never had hands on one. You've never manipulated one, and you don't necessarily know what else to expect. And some of the manufacturers have gotten better at shipping in tamper-evident packaging, but the thing is, you could still tamper with the device and then repackage it in tamper-evident packaging if your motivation is worth you putting in the effort to do so. So if you're talking Ledger, Trezor, Cold Card, or anything even close to that type of a product, it is worth whatever extra you will spend to just get it straight from the source. You know, there's more layers to this that we could get into at a later point in time. I think we touched on it briefly last week or the week before with Frankie about, you know, verifying Pgp signatures on the actual software that you install on your computer. If you download Ledger Live, or if you download Wasabi Wallet, or, you know, Sparrow or anything, there are steps that you need to take to ensure, especially when you're talking about transferring significant assets to these devices or to these wallets or to cold storage, that you're doing it in a way where nowhere in the chain of events were you compromised, and nowhere were you vulnerable to an attack vector that you didn't see coming. So that's why we talk about these. That's why we beat this dead horse, because there's so many clever ways that people can introduce attack vectors, especially when you're talking about money involved and there's enough incentive financially, and you're talking about people that are new to a space because the space is proliferating as fast as it is. So there's a ton of good information that people can look into that I would suggest that they do as far as best practices when it comes to these devices. But at a very simple solution level, make sure you're buying these devices directly from the manufacturers. I can't stress enough the importance of that.
Absolutely, 100%.
Hey, Michael, is it worth also talking about the 3 things you should do when you buy a hardware wallet, or should we leave that to another time?
Go for it. I mean, I think that we have a very exchange-heavy audience that honestly has never taken assets off exchange, but that's not to say that they won't, and especially if these assets, you know, significantly ramp up into the year and people won't across multiple custody methods. I think that it's a valid point. You know, we're not trying to encourage people to pull assets off platform, but there are people who are going to do it anyway. And I think that it's something that people should be educated on how to do it properly. So go for it.
Right. I mean, listen, this is in the hopes that we all become millionaires, billionaires in the near future, right? So with that in mind, if you're looking to purchase a hardware wallet, there's really three things you need to do for purchase it directly from the manufacturer. But when you do, purchase it with a prepaid debit card. And this is all self-sovereignty, like anonymity, things of that nature. So if you are into privacy, this is the way to do it. So step one, buy it directly from the manufacturer. Step two, use a prepaid debit card. Step three, use a email address that's not your own. And when I say that, there's certain email addresses where basically you can run pseudonyms off of it. So you have your main email address, and then you have another one that just is a random one that you could use for that particular purchase. And then the third thing is have it sent not to your home. You should have it sent either to a friend's house or business address. That just those are the best practices for when you buy a hardware wallet. And there's different YouTube channels that I can talk to you about. Ministry of Nodes goes into this very detailed. And again, it's all to protect privacy. It's basically, if God forbid, there's an event where confiscation is a real possibility, you want to be prepared. So these are the steps that you would need to be prepared. I know we're kind of going into the rabbit hole here, but I figured it would be a good time to state it. Again, I know we all love Voyager and we're exchange heavy, but this is in the hopes that our assets are worth a lot more in the near future than they are today, and that we want to take self-custody of it. So that's all I have on that subject.
Definitely so. No, I couldn't agree more. Anybody have anything to tag on that before we move on to the next topic?
While we're here, I got DM'd a question that's relevant, so I'm going to just go ahead and take it here. So the question was, what's the best way to protect a Metamask wallet? And I will be the first to admit that I'm not as ETH heavy as I could be, and I'll certainly do some more research and revisit if there's anything more thorough than the basics that I would know. But one vulnerability of a MetaMask wallet is just that it's a hot wallet. So it comes with the same vulnerabilities that any hot wallet would always have. It's perpetually connected to the internet. So in that regard, I would just follow typical hot wallet best practices. So your passphrase from MetaMask should be high entropy, randomized, and only used for that one use case. It's not a password that you use also for your email or your bank account or anything else. That's one thing. The second would be really just the way that you save your seed phrase, the way that you protect your seed phrase. So a common error that people make along the way is that for simplicity's sake, they'll take a screenshot of their passphrase of their seed phrase when it's up on the screen. That's not a good idea. If you've ever done that and you have assets in that wallet, I would suggest creating a new wallet and migrating the assets over to that, and then using better practices with the new wallet. But you don't want to take screenshots of your seed phrase. You don't want to save it in anything digital. It should never be input into anything digital other than in the event that you ever needed to use it in MetaMask to restore the wallet elsewhere. So you shouldn't be saving it in a note, even if it's a secure note or an encrypted note. I wouldn't even put it into the encrypted notes capability of any of the password managers that we've recommended in the past. It wouldn't take a screen grab of the QR code for the private address or anything like that. Those are simple mistakes that I think most people make, and I have gone through that with members of this panel. Having to move assets and then start a new wallet because that step was jeopardized, and that's one of those things where you can't really put the toothpaste back in the tube. So I mean, if we're talking long-term storage of ETH assets or ERC20 assets or things like that, you can always go the cold storage route and just get a cold storage wallet that is capable of storing ERC20 assets or ETH assets, which I think is pretty much most, except for like the Bitcoin only wallets, like a cold card. You know, a cold card is going to be Bitcoin only, but you know, your ledgers and Trezors out there are going to be cross-chain compatible. But as far as the actual MetaMask itself, if you're using a high entropy randomized passphrase and your seed phrase is protected in an analog capacity, and you know, we haven't really touched on that, but some ways that I would advocate for people to store their seed phrase is, you know, like I said, analog on something fire retardant is also helpful, because just writing it on a piece of paper and then putting that paper someplace that, God forbid, the building that it's in burned down, you'd lose it, is not necessarily a good remedy. So you've got fire, you could write it on something and then put it in a fireproof safe, but understand that fireproof safes typically only have a rating for a set number of hours before the contents in them would ultimately be vulnerable. One of the best ways to mitigate that is basically to transfer them to something made out of steel, and stainless steel in particular, because then you are no longer at risk of fire or corrosion, and it's still in an analog setting. So there are a number of different products that are sold where you can use a center punch and punch your seed phrase onto like a plate of steel that's like a credit card size, and then those get stored however you would securely store something like that. But some of the more clever ways that are also cost minimized use stainless steel washers that are generic. So, you know, another vulnerability of getting one of those things that is crypto specific, that is only used for saving seed phrases, is if anywhere in that supply chain of it getting to you it was compromised, or if the company that you bought it from is ever compromised, then it is known to potentially a bad actor that you have assets worth protecting and you own one of these. So you maybe don't give them any kind of specificity as to what is on it or where it's kept, but you're in a binary sense of whether or not you'd be a good target to try to potentially break into your home or something like that. You're creating unnecessary risk by having something that is a unitasker like that is only used in the crypto space. So that's where I kind of like the generic route of using as much multi-purpose product as possible. That's why I like, for nodes, I don't like getting a node from an out-of-the-box node company. I'd rather buy it with Raspberry Pis that could be used for anything. I don't like, you know, even with hardware wallets, if I had the choice between buying a Trezor or building a Trezor, I would prefer to build a Trezor with Raspberry Pi Zeros. You know, these things that are generic, because it's that many less things that are traceable to you that you're in the space and put you on the radar of a potential bad actor. But as far as the seed phrase storage, there's a 3D printed device called the Block Mitt, which is basically just a 3D printed jig, and there's a set of metric stainless steel washers that you could put into it, and then you buy letter punches from a hardware store like Harbor Freight. You know, it's not expensive. It's like maybe $9 for a set of letter punches from Harbor Freight, and the jigs I think are like maybe $3 or $4 a piece to get them made for you. Or if you have a 3D printer or access to a 3D printer, it's probably one of the simplest things to 3D print. And you basically can just with a hammer and a letter punch one of your seed phrase words onto each washer, and then you take the washers and you stack them up and you put a bolt through them and a nut on the other end, and you basically just tighten it down, and now you have your seed phrase preserved in steel, fireproof, corrosion proof, and very small and concealable and easy to store somewhere. So it's one of the more clever ways to go about it, and I think it's also one of the most effective. So I hope that kind of answers the question. You can do that with a seed phrase for anything, whether it's regardless of the chain. But ultimately, your vulnerability on something like a MetaMask would be more so the fact that it's a hot wallet that's always connected to the internet, and maybe a little bit less so the fact that if you use good practices for password protection and seed phrase protection, that's about the best that you could do with a hot wallet.
Go ahead, Piggy.
Yeah, I just wanted to add 2 things to that because I've seen a lot of this lately. So number 1, don't pay somebody to do this for you on Etsy, because I've seen that advertised. So basically, you're giving a whole bunch of information all at once to somebody, plus probably your seed phrase. So don't go that route. And to be on the lookout for these things about 20 years from now in antique shops, because you never know who may have lost their wallet, and then you can play that game at that time. Love you guys.
Thanks, Piggy. Sorry, I got caught up in tabs. What's going on, Frankie? You can go ahead and add to it.
Yeah, no, if anyone wants to go into a very deep dive, Jameson Lopp on his website, Lopp, LOPP.net, does an extensive article on seed phrases and different types of metals and companies that sell metal plates, and he goes through flamethrowers, acid tests, and whatnot. So that's a great resource for anyone who really is interested. Lopp.net, LOPP.
Yeah, and I think even like
Good stuff.
Econo Alchemist, like put him in acid and did a bunch of stuff to it. He really was like in the doomsday scenario. He put it under like an oxyacetylene torch for a while and really just put it through its paces and showed you the after effect and the fact that you could still clearly read all 24 words. It's pretty fascinating what some of these doomsday preppers in the space do to protect their privacy and anonymity, and a lot of it is not as nuts as it may seem, and it's pretty accessible just to the average person in the space.
Good stuff, everybody. Good stuff. This is, I learn something new every day up here, and I'm sure everybody else can attest to that. Any kind of final thoughts on kind of the OPSEC, hard wallets, anything like that?
I'll try to find the Blockmint thing a minute, and I'll pin the tweet to the spaces as well.
Perfect. Well, we're a little over an hour in, so I'll kind of go over the idea for what we're thinking about gifting every VGX hero. So there's a type of NFT that's called POAP. It's Proof of Attendance Protocol. So you make NFTs through them, you give them a design, they produce said number, however many. These NFTs can be claimed for free on their website. So it's as simple as you put your wallet, and then through their system, your wallet's connected, and the POAP sits on their website. And you pay nothing. It's free to mint for us, so it solves a lot of those issues. The NFT idea or potential coin idea has been thrown out a long time, but we didn't want to get into licensing issues or, monetary treasury issues or, any kind of payment. So we're working on that right now, but yeah, it'll be a free for us to make. It'll be free for everybody to mint. Every hero will get one. So it'll be no wallet can claim two. Every wallet can only claim one. And they will only be on POAP's website, but you can pay gas to move it to your actual wallet if you so choose. But you can leave it there for free. Go on there anytime, type it, put your wallet address, and then it'll show it up there. That's just an idea, something we want to do for everybody, because we want to do stuff, kind of almost like a badge or something to prove, like, yeah, we're more than just just heroes on Twitter and a mint list. Like, we're trying to do the best we can. But if you have any questions with that, definitely feel free to shoot it to me. We're still working on like getting a good design and exactly how we're going to go about doing it, but definitely keep posted on that, and we'll update you as we go. But moving forward, I kind of want to get into kind of a group discussion over DYOR, do your own research, because everybody says that, but not everybody knows ways to go about doing that. So we'll kind of go through everybody. We can start with you, Floki. When somebody says like do your own research, there's a new coin, NFT, anything that you're looking to invest in, how would you go about researching it?
Oh man, I mean, probably not as detailed as I should answer this, but I just make sure that I give myself plenty of time to research, just dive as deep as I can to Google, and just kind of let my path open up in front of me and just dive in and try to absorb as much as I can, and then take it back to people that I trust and just sort of discuss and figure out what the most common thing is between all of these different research sources and people that I'm talking to about them. Kind of mass in numbers, really just find as many different and similar things that you read about a particular thing that you're researching and come to your own conclusion. But it's just really important that you set aside the time to focus and actually do the research. So that's my answer.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. Frankie, what about you?
I guess the one thing that the first thing that I do is I take a deep dive into the white paper, and if the project really makes sense to me, I kind of shy away from projects that have a large concentration to a few people. But that's just me. That's how I go about it. Basically, dive into the white paper if it's a project that I believe in, and can think of use case scenario. Another thing, well, not so much research, but I also try to think of if how convex a trade or a position can, a return can be, to kind of get out into something else. So that's my two-prong approach.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. Pig, what's your go-to when you're looking at a new coin?
So, I mean, I don't actively seek out new coins per se. Most of it ends up being something where either somebody who I'm already following and paying attention to has mentioned something in regards to this coin, which usually will prompt at least a little bit of research on my end. I mean, first I'm going to ask Michael, and if Michael doesn't know, then I'm going to move forward from there. But to be honest, no, I really like Coin Bureau. Guy from Coin Bureau, he's on YouTube. He does a lot of breakdown of new coins. Sometimes he'll revisit coins with updates. He's got a section at the end where he vaguely references price targets, and I don't pay a whole lot of gusto into that itself. But if you are new to the space and you just really want an objective overview on a coin, what it does, its utility, what market space it's targeting, etc. I think they do a very good job of breaking down the space, what the coin actually does, what it's targeted to do. They give you overviews about market caps and the total supply, and you can really start to formulate your own opinion from there. Again, you take that price target with a grain of salt, because I mean, we've all been experienced to daily, weekly, monthly, yearly targets for price coins all over Twitter, and you might as well be you're just speculating, right? And nobody's got the right answer, and if they did, they wouldn't be sharing it with you. But yeah, no, I usually start with Coin Bureau because they give an objective. My second point for me personally is if I start reading into the white paper and what the coin does, and it's just not an area that I have any interest in whatsoever, I mean, it's going to take a lot for me to go ahead and push myself into that direction, because realistically, I'm just not, I have a limited attention span as it is. I think you guys know this because you read my tweets. But like, if it's not something that interests me and I'm not that dedicated to it, then I mean, realistically, I'm not going to put a lot of money into it, because I'm not passionate enough about keeping up with what the coin is doing, what the company is doing. I think crypto is really odd in the sense that, I mean, as VGX holders, we have more access to information than most crypto other coins do, because you don't, I mean, I don't know. It's hard to explain, but like you can't go target, Satoshi Nakamoto and say, hey, what's going on with Bitcoin the way we can with Steve. Like, I, I mean, I don't know. To a degree, at that point, at the end of the day, it's if I'm not passionate about, I'm not going to keep up with it. I'm not going to keep continuing to follow stuff with it, and it's probably going to be a loss of investment in terms of, I'm just hoping that the price goes up, right? So for me, DYOR means not only I need to understand what the coin does, I need to understand what the vision is. I would hope that there's a roadmap. I would hope that it has some utility, but I'm going to start with the basis of learning about a coin that I don't know about. And like I said, I think Coin Bureau does a really good job of that. And then from there, find out whether or not it's something that interests me. And then I'm going to start branching out to other YouTube stuff, starting to chasing the, the coin marker on Twitter, and trying to figure out who are some of the main speakers in that space that are bringing up pertinent information about the coin. But I mean, I don't know. I think the thing that I've been struggling with lately in terms of the price of VGX and with VGX coin and with other coins in general is, your own personal research and your own personal thesis on where price is going to go matters way more than anybody else can tell you on the internet, right? Like, you need to find those coins or investments that you believe in and hold that conviction, and you can't be influenced by anybody else but yourself.
Definitely. So I appreciate that, Piggy. I'm gonna go before Michael, so I don't sound dumb going after Michael. Strategic here, but so when I hear about a new coin, I start off with like, okay, how did I hear about it? And so I go to the chart, I see where it's at, because I don't want to buy anybody else's bags if it just pumped 200%. So I look at it on the chart. I go so trading view, and then I look at coin market cap to kind of get a breakdown of supply, market cap, kind of the activity in it, and then I go and I research the coin. So I try to find a website. I go to news just to see if there's any negative or any kind of biased news, kind of get a different side. It's kind of the main things I do. I definitely check out, kind of Twitter, see like the sentiment around it, kind of, how people are reacting, what the like kind of bullish things coming. Because I want to have conviction. If I'm buying something, it's because I have conviction in it. I believe in it. I think it's going to go up for a reason. So I want to know the utility. I want to know why it's going to go up, and I also want to know like long-term implications of it, because some projects are fantastic right now, but if you think about it in the grand scheme of things, as like computers, and as the industry adapts and grows and improves, because it's changing every day, will this be viable? Will there be something that can beat it when the next generation of computer processing comes out? Things along those lines. So I like to have a good understanding use case, who uses it, why, what it does, and why it will stay. That's kind of a quick breakdown. But you can go ahead, Michael.
Well, you know me. I mean, I just buy a YOLO bag of random alts and say fuck it.
I mean, you're NFT specialist on the panel, so.
All right. No, seriously. So yeah, I probably have an answer that is gonna be pretty predictable. But first thing that I want to know is the level of decentralization. I think the only thing that can honestly make a claim to decentralization at this point is Bitcoin, just because of the nature of the way that it came to be, and the fact that it was the first. I think after that, it's become borderline impossible for anything else to be truly decentralized. There's always some sort of a human factors risk to the level of centralization, but at the point that you're not going to go full maxi about it, and you're going to have an appetite for other assets in the space, then I think that you do look at the concentration of the large holders, like Frank was mentioning, as far as how the asset is distributed. Was it a pre-mine? How much is still held by the foundation that created it? The things that would help you assess the likelihood of a potential rug pull or any kind of a scam involved there. I would then assess the risks from a human factors perspective, like I was just saying, as far as the people involved, or if there's anything about how the asset is distributed amongst the people that would create a risk. You could also then take a look at regulatory risk, competitive risk. One important point that I think wasn't really touched upon yet is understanding, we talked about reading. I think that's where you find a lot of this information, but sometimes the white paper can be so high level that people don't necessarily know how to read it, because it's not necessarily in vernacular that's very digestible. So some things in there that I would look into would be things like the supply, the inflation rate, and there are ways to play those things to your advantage or disadvantage. So I would not have a hard and fast rule that an inflating supply is necessarily bad. It would maybe factor into my calculus of my time horizon for my investment. Like if something is fairly fresh and in the beginning it's starting with the staking reward where the yield is crazy high and it's going to create a ton of supply, it needs to proliferate as an investment at a fast enough rate to counter the rate at which it's creating new supply. So it may be something where I know that, there's 100 million of this token, there's ultimately going to be 350 million of it. I will formulate an investment thesis based on wanting to get out maybe in 6 months instead of 6 years, or some, these are things that are going to form my entire thesis on the asset. Not that it's necessarily a thumbs up, thumbs down decision. Not everything is a buy and hold forever. Some things could be a trade. Some things could be a daily horizon, a weekly horizon. This bull run, I think this bull run is going to take off, but then the overinflated supply is going to bite it in the ass and it's going to implode over the next bear market. There are different theses that are all perfectly okay to have. But these are some of the things that I would look into. I would also want to understand the token's history as well as its roadmap for where it's going in the future. Probably most importantly, I would want to know what it does or what it is intended to do. Probably one of the most frustrating things is to hear a token pumped so vociferously by its community, yet they can't tell you what it does or what they think it might do ever. That's usually a pretty big red flag. That's not really something that I like to hear. That's not something that I'm going to invest in personally. If the people that are the most vocal about it can't actually tell you what it does, all they can tell you is the other people that they like it too, that's usually a pretty big red flag for me. I also look into competitors in the space. What are the other tokens that are similar? This gets into the use case. What is it trying to accomplish? And what else is trying to accomplish that same thing? A lot of them want to die on the hill of transactions per second or things or transaction costs, things along those lines. Well, all right. Well, when you look at it through the lens of transactions per second, what else is trying to win at that? And is this asset predisposed to actually make a dent? If so, if not, formulate your thesis accordingly. As far as competitors in the space and similarities in the space in general, that's one way of looking at it. I would also then look at within my own portfolio, how does this fit in? Am I already overweight, for example, layer ones? Well, if I'm already overweight layer ones, does this additional layer one differ enough from the other layer ones I'm already invested in where I believe there's going to be more alpha in this one than those? If not, do I want to go, maybe 60, 30, 10 layer ones, layer twos, and something in the utility space? If I look at my portfolio in a mindset like that, where I want to have a certain weighting of what the function of each token is, then I would have to figure out where does this fit into my portfolio personally. Another big question would be liquidity. A lot of people FOMO into highly illiquid shitcoins that have zero sustainability, but are only making the moves that they're making because so few of them are transacting and there's nowhere to get them. So it's a farce to buy into it without actually understanding just how illiquid something is. And then other, there's secondary and tertiary considerations too once you pick an asset. So if you're talking in the Voyager space, is that asset transferable? We know that some are transferable, some are not. Is it going to matter to me? If I'm not a fundamentalist that actually thinks that this asset is going to change the world, and I'm just buying it for the trade, do I have any need to transfer it? If it's just a straight alpha play, then I don't care if it's transferable or not. But if it's something where I'm going to use it, like I need to be able to get it to a DEX so that I can then stake it or swap it or do something with it or engage with a smart contract with it in some way, shape, or form, then that's going to matter to me as far as whether or not I buy it in the first place, where I buy it from, how I custody it. Are there yield options available? Are there yield options where I bought it? Does it need to move? And then ultimately, if I've gone through all that and I decide that I'm inclined to take a position, then I start to formulate the strategy from the perspective of what is my entry? Is it, and typically you want a dollar cost average in so that you don't pop in all at once and then the bottom falls out from under you and then you're upside down in your position forever. So personally, I'm okay having an unfilled position instead of having an overfull position that I didn't get a good entry on. So I will take a look at technical analysis and charting and try to figure out, based on the charts, what entry points I want to pursue. And then, just for simplicity's sake, maybe say that I set 3 price points where I'm going to buy, 25% of what I want at this price point, another 50% of what I want at the next price point. And then if I get lucky enough that it goes down a little bit more past there, I'll buy the last 25% below that. And I'll fully satisfy the 100% of the position that I wanted to enter. And if I only get the first 25% and then it goes up from there, then so be it. You can't really complain about it going up. Would you have wanted more? Sure, but I'm not one to play on emotion. I'm not a sentiment trader. I know that there's a market for selling sentiment, but it's not one that I ascribe to. Personally, I would rather miss the boat on something, but know analytically why I'm pursuing it, and that's just the way that I'm wired. So I'm not saying everyone to formulate their theses the same way, but I tend to gravitate towards measurable, quantifiable, tangible things that I can see and touch and understand.
Thank you. See now that's exactly why I went before you. But whatever, everything Michael just said, just imagine I said that too. Thank you. But yeah, great insight, everybody. Ross, you have anything to add to that?
That's mean.
No, I really don't have too much to add. I think everybody did a good job. I guess the only other thing I would add is, keep in mind when you're doing your due diligence to keep in mind the author as well as the intended audience, because regardless of what sources you're using to gather data, everybody's going to be pushing their own narrative and or agenda. And even trying to look at what you think might be good resources of information, we've seen with, for instance, the market cap of the VGX token, for instance, being misreported just because of the token history and the chart not being spliced. If you're going into evaluate a new token and you're not familiar with the history, it's really important to understand that there might be extra digging that you're having to do. A lot of this stuff isn't just a superficial once over, because that's not really due diligence. You reading a couple of articles and glancing over the white paper, that's from my perspective, that's not sufficient, because everybody's got a narrative that they're trying to push, and that's what you have to do as an individual investor, is balancing whether or not you agree with that narrative, all the while trying to balance any biases that you might be developing. You might have a friend that you really trust that really likes a token, and that might get you started on your diligence. But at the same time, don't let your affinity for that particular friend who might have recommended that cloud your judgment too much when you're gathering that data.
I want to jump in and just say another thing to look out for is the difference between an investor's mindset versus a trader's mindset, because you're going to run into both of them, and sometimes it's hard to know the difference because it's two totally different strategies and reasons to invest in something.
Definitely so. Definitely so. And that's a great conversation to get in, because I think it's a topic that, it's thrown out there a lot, but a lot of new people, especially, they come to Twitter for their research and for their information. So when they, see somebody saying DYOR, it's like, okay, well, what does that mean? I'm seeing information on Twitter. So that's great insight. But Pablo, you've been up here for a little bit. You have anything to add?
No, I just wanted to add, the first thing is I think before you make an investment, you need to figure out who you are. Where do you fall in line? Am I an investor? Am I a trader? Like for me as an investor, I'm really not concerned about daily price movement because I'm years down the road. Whereas somebody that's new to the game, they have no idea who they are, who they identify as. So all good stuff. But the one thing that I wanted to talk about, and I had a chance to. I only had a few seconds to jump in on the call last week with Steve Ehrlich. So after I listened to it, I realized I think I was the second or third person to bring up the USDC and it being FDIC insured. But Steve had mentioned, although there is no insurance to sell, that and that we were self-insured. I mean, in your guys' opinion, do you think it would make sense for them to come out with something that said, because I think it's still a gray area that people don't really understand. Is my investment safe if I invested in Voyager? Am I going to get that 9% to 10.5% if I'm in a VLP tour? Is that money safeguarded like it would be in a bank? And even something as simple as coming out with a Voyager guarantee, which says, hey, you know what? We are self-insured. We will cover your assets that you invest up to a certain, certain dollar amount, because we are that confident in the companies that we are lending to. We're that confident in our balance sheet. Like, I really feel like he needs to hammer that home. It wouldn't cost the company anything, and I just feel like it would, put that to rest and encourage a lot more people to carry, their money in USDC on Voyager if they had that Voyager guarantee. I know as a business owner, if I had something like that, I would buy up, on behalf of my business, which is a whole nother thing that Steve has talked about, forming, Voyager accounts for businesses and how that's a manual process. But even once that comes along, I'd sign up both my businesses and they would both be navigator positions like overnight to get that, to get that all the things that come along with it. But I feel like if they just came out with a Voyager guarantee, plastered it on the website, your investment is insured, we are self-insured up to this point, I feel like it would just be huge for the VLP in the community.
Yeah, I definitely get that. And he's talked about it, but I think it's just being a public company, he's very hesitant on guarantees and things along those lines. But I mean, from everything he says, it's as insured as it can be without being FDIC. But I think that comes with just, with regulations, when more crypto clarity in general, what steps moving forward on what he can and can't say and what he can guarantee and can't publicly. Michael, you have anything to add on that?
I think it's a tough spot because I don't understand the mechanics of how they do it behind the scenes well enough to comment on it. I would say that just in general, this topic is one that comes up a lot, and I've heard a number of different interpretations of how the questions have been answered. So I think for simplicity's sake, for the community's sake, and I would think even honestly for like Steve's sanity and the folks at Voyager, a more comprehensive FAQ or something that is published and accessible that you can point people to, instead of having to chase down little snippets from past audio or video, would probably help a lot.
He was very clear in the AMA last week that.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. I would be a big fan of seeing something that's referenceable for people in the future, so that we don't have to try to read between the lines. He was clear, but I don't know any real color outside of what was said. So I think that if they were to put together a more comprehensive FAQ, that would go a long way.
No, absolutely. I agree with you 100%. But I mean, he was very clear that, although there was no FDIC insurance available, that he deferred to the balance sheet as saying, look, we can handle, our balance sheet is so strong, we can handle this. I would just like clarification, that the investment is protected because our balance sheet is so strong. Like, you will not incur any losses to yourself because we will pay those losses if, we make a bad investment in a company, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And that was kind of the same reason I asked him the question during that AMA. But, like, I feel great knowing that Steve has a strong balance sheet, and they would probably, if they got hacked and it was, their issue, they would cover it from their own funds or something. But me knowing that doesn't get my parents onto the platform. It doesn't, bring in the boomers who only have the 250,000 FDIC insured dollars left to basically last them the rest of their life. So from like a messaging and an advertising perspective, if that's something they're going to offer, that's great, but like it can't be a selling point unless they make it one. And like it could be a thing that would bring in a huge number of new customers, but until, and you totally get it, agree, Pepe and Michael, it's very complicated behind the scenes from a corporate perspective, I'm sure. But like, if it's the kind of thing where they can tell us, like, I feel like it would be worth it for them in the long run to make that a thing, because that would differentiate them in the marketplace in a big way.
I agree. Frankie, you have anything to add? I see your mic's unmuted.
Oh yeah. No, I did. I feel like he's just kind of walking a fine line. I think if you look at regulatory requirements for these corporations between like the EU and the States, it's very hard to make certain statements. So I think once he gets what he needs, at least from my perspective, I have no connection to Steve. This is just me reading in between the lines personally, so don't take it as face value. But it seems like, to me anyway, that there's a lot of regulatory hurdles on both sides of the pond that he's trying to juggle, and has to very carefully word his answers with regards to insurance and what have you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It's a little off topic, but a question I got answered in my messages, Michael, is who do you think Satoshi Nakamoto is? I know it's a.
Well, I'll tell you who I think it's not, that a lot of people think is in the running. After having seen him in Miami, I crossed Nick Szabo off of my list. While I think he's brilliant in the space and in a completely brilliant force in Bitcoin, in monetary policy, and all of the above, I no longer think it's him. I think honestly it was likely a group of people led by Hal Finney. That's the direction that I lead on it. And Hal's no longer with us, so we'll probably never get confirmation on that. I know who I think it definitely wasn't as well, but he likes to sue everybody that says that he wasn't Satoshi, so I won't go any further on that. But everybody else could probably figure who that is if they're familiar with the history. But
yeah.
But no, I would lean more towards Hal Finney, and likely having led. So there's a bunch in the history in the early messages back and forth, the few that there are, where Satoshi, the pseudonym's vernacular was inconsistent, and in some analytics it aligned with Hal Finney's, and in others it didn't. So that's where I'm inclined to think that it was probably a group of people and not one individual, but I do think that Hal was likely to have been a part of that initial group.
I totally agree with that.
I think it's Hal Finney was, the main dude. If there's anybody that overwhelmingly, it would make the most, it's Hal in a lot of different ways. And I may be wrong, but he received from Satoshi's wallet the first transaction from him, huh?
Yeah, I believe that's correct.
Yeah, so, but I tend to agree with Hal, and it's very unfortunate he lost his life so early, and especially with early on in crypto and everything. But yeah, BSV's a scam. But that's all I have on that.
Oh my gosh.
You're gonna get sued right along with Peter McCormick now. Get ready.
Can't wait. But another question I had on that was, how is Bitcoin more decentralized than decentralized coins, and just kind of getting in on that topic.
So without being too controversial about it, where I say that because of how it came to be and because of the fact that it was first, it puts it in a unique position. There's no identifiable party to pursue. There's no human factor that can be leveraged or have pressure applied in the same way that a number of these other projects are. So an Ethereum or a Cardano or a Polkadot, or they can decentralize, and that's all well and good. But at the end of the day, they're still the Ethereum Foundation. And, when the shit hits the fan, you still see these messages like, everybody please stop trading. We can fix this. Or, ETH has broken a couple times in the past year. Charles on the Cardano side is still heavily involved in the development of Cardano. There's at least, even though it may not be feasible or may not be likely, there's still a human pressure point that, should things go nuclear with some type of a state agency or government that wants to really gum up the works, there are human beings to which pressure can be applied to possibly shift the direction of things. And Bitcoin does not have that same vulnerability. You can maybe try to kick all the miners out of China. That'd be a good way to test the decentralized power of Bitcoin. Yet, as of today, the United States now has the lion's share of miners on Earth, or hash power on Earth. China is no longer the superpower that it was, and it took it in stride, all things considered. Yeah, we had a crazy dip on May 19th, and yeah, we didn't have a very pleasant summer, but we also had a technical formation of a head and shoulders that I think should have produced Bitcoin to a price of like negative 5,000 by last month, and I'm pretty sure it didn't go there. There's a number of times there are a number of times in Bitcoin's history where it could have been at risk of having been too centralized, but at this point, when you look at the number of nodes out there and the allocation of mining hash rate and where it's spread out, and it doesn't face the same centralization risk that the other assets do. That's kind of the binary approach that I would look at it with. And I'm not dying on this hill of saying that you can't make money on a centralized asset or the centralized assets can't succeed. But if decentralization is your binary, if you're a single issue voter and you vote on lines of decentralization, then it's kind of hard to argue the other side of that point. I'd be happy to hear a good point made, but that's what I mean when I say that it's more decentralized than the rest, is that there is no pressure point or risk of an attack vector on a human being.
Yeah. The two kind of quick tests that I use and I agree with Michael that Bitcoin's probably the only totally decentralized coin. But the two quick tests that I always use to, figure out how decentralized I think a coin is one, there's somebody who can probably directly exert control over it, like, Vitalik or Charles Hoskinson, could probably make changes to the chain from their force of will and their influence alone. There's nobody in Bitcoin that I think could do that. And the second way I look at that question is there a person that if they died would significantly impact the performance of this project? Like, if Vitalik died tomorrow, I'm sure Ethereum would survive in the long run, but it would be a massive shock. If Charles Hoskinson died, Cardano would immediately suffer massive pain. I'm sure it'd probably be fine in the long run, but you know what I mean? Like, there are figureheads in these coins, and I can't think of a single person, Max Kaiser, Robert Breedlove, pick whoever in Bitcoin. Pretty much anybody in Bitcoin could die tomorrow and it would not affect Bitcoin that much.
Yeah, I totally agree with those points. And I mean, Bitcoin, excluding Satoshi's wallet, because you can't really. I mean, we all go off the theoretical basis; it's never going to be touched. But so excluding that wallet, I mean, the supply is. There are some big whales out there, but I mean, these are people that bought in very early, and they are Bitcoin maxis true and true. So would they ever dump all their Bitcoin? I don't see the real case where that occurs. And it's so spread out. And early on, that was a potential, and like even 2017's crash and everything. But that kind of proves Bitcoin's legitimacy, that it's just getting more and more wallets buying it, and so just kind of going on along those bases. But we got about a little under 15 minutes left. Anybody has anything to say, definitely feel free to request. Get you up here. Once again, this is being recorded on Crypto Airborne stream, or on Crypto Airborne's YouTube. So after this, if you miss anything, go over there and the recording will be posted. It'll probably take a little bit, so it won't be immediate. Follow the VGX Heroes Twitter page, follow everybody on the panel, and can I get some hundreds for the last little bit here? Thank you everybody that's in here. Appreciate you all as always. We do this every Wednesday. This is just, a pure education panel. We're happy, here to just help out any way we can. You have any questions, feel free to request, get you up here.
So
I don't have too many more.
Go ahead. I've got another round robin. If we've got nobody coming up here, if we could just go down the panel. But I'm just curious. We've kind of come a long way from the depths of despair over the summer. So I'm just curious. We've talked about how we do all our research, but what's everybody on the panel currently looking at? If you could focus on one asset that's on your, top of mind right now, what's everybody looking at? Floki, why don't you go first?
Honestly, I don't have the time to really be looking around at other assets right now. I just keep my eye on this community and VGX, really. There's a lot of other things I got juggling. So I'm a bad person to ask, but I would just say, if you have the time, go for it. I just don't, so I can't answer. I'm sorry.
All right, what about you, Pep?
So on the crypto side, I've been into AVAX for a long time. It's is the reason I came on to Voyager. Big AVAX guy. So kind of looking into ecosystems more. So besides AVAX, I like ecosystems within Cardano, and things like that. So kind of more early projects. But lately I've been really big into NFTs. I just see more and more, use cases for them. And so I'm really big into NFT space right now. And to do a little shield would be Platypunks on NFTs.
All right, Piggy, what about you?
So for me, the one asset that I haven't been able to dump or move in my Voyager VGX holdings is VET or VChain. I find the technology interesting and find the real world applications of it to be something that I'm excited about in terms of how it can bring technology and supply chain into the future. The other coin on the platform that I currently like but haven't dipped my toe into is Chili's or CHZ, or I think it's Chili's, but it's probably pronounced wrong because I don't speak good. But the thing I like about that coin, just from somebody who is a sports fanatic and just kind of likes the thought process of that, is basically you can use that platform to be a fanatic of, say, I don't know, Michael, your favorite Italian football team or something like that, and how it could bring application to the States in terms of U.S. holders. I am not following it closely enough in terms of what professional sports teams that it's bringing to in the States. I thought I saw something about maybe the Spurs or something, and you know, I'm just talking out of my head right now, but like if you're somebody who is a sports fanatic, what that coin allows you to do is play a role in certain aspects of the franchise. Now, the things that I've, you know, basically done very limited research, and again, I do my you know, do DYOR with Coin Bureau, and I think, you know, Guy presented it in terms of like, let's say you're a big fan of, you know, I don't know, Juventus, if you were a Serie A fan, and you may not be able to determine who's going to be a person that the team's going to go out and sign, but you can use your vote based off of your percentage owned of that coin to determine what kind of marketing they're going to do on the buses that are driving around in Italy, or you know, other aspects of marketing. They're allowing you to have your ownership of that coin be your voice towards your fandom of that team, and I find that to be completely, you know, mind-blowing and fascinating in terms of, you know, the prospects of what that could be to somebody who is a fan of a certain team, and how they could apply that to US sports. It's not there yet to a degree, you know, but it's super interesting to me, and I think it's a coin to watch out for.
All right, what about you, Frank?
Well, I think you know the answer to that. If I had any more funds, or if I could sell my kidney on the black market, I'd say, and I've mentioned this to you before, Michael. What Crypto Daddy Pig just said on the Chili's. That I thought that was one of the most interesting coins that I researched like 4 or 5 months ago, maybe longer. But it does an interesting thing where it fills a space between being a consumer and being a shareholder. So Crypto Daddy Pig, I think you mentioned it. It like you get like these voting rights essentially for, you know, what shirts you can wear at what shirts the team should wear on in exhibition matches, or something of that nature. And I guess the price of the coin would increase as the value of the team increases too. But there's also applications that it can be used in, you know, companies like Amazon and such. Outside of that, you know, I got a pretty narrow bag, so I'm just you know, Bitcoin and VGX type of guy. So.
All right, thanks. Let's see, you guys are still hanging out on the stage, so I'll come to you. What about you, Winter Soldier?
You know, for me, it's on the crypto side, I'm mostly rotated back into Bitcoin because I think it's time for a big leg up there. But really, like, as far as exploratory stuff, I feel like where we're at with NFTs right now is very parallel to where ICOs were in 2017. And you know, a lot of them are shit and are going to implode and go away. But if you can find the projects that actually, you know, aren't just derivative and do something novel, like I think the Platypunks art gallery concept is really cool. That's one thing. But you know, like, there are other things that really like extend into the metaverse and access to worlds and groups and experiences that I think are going to be so transformative. And the NFTs that, you know, happen now that are still around in a couple years during like the next bull cycle, if you can figure out what those are going to be now, like, that's going to be really life changing. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Nice, thanks for that. And Mikey, I'll come to you next because you came up while we were already answering that. So I don't know if you want to chime in on this or if you had another question, but the floor is yours.
Hi, yeah. So mine's a larger cap. I like Luna a lot, but I messaged you on it earlier. I'm not sure, but the fees are cheaper. It's a big platform. It's partnering with Sol and others. So I like Luna.
Yeah, I wish Ross was still up here because he's the one that I would defer to get my intel on Luna. But I would suggest connect with him via DM and pick his brain a little bit. I didn't want to lead you astray, but I swing trade Luna periodically based on some TA, and I feel like it's been kind of a good beta trade against the rest of the market because it tends to go up when everything's going down and go down when everything's going up. So it's been an easy trade to rotate in and out of. And I've swung it a few times. Really, just it's kind of been my test case of the VLP cashback on trades because I'm typically not actively trading and not trading within Voyager. I'm more of a trader in the equities and options side of the world, and I've been swing trading, ETH in an IRA account kind of deal. But Luna's been my little test bed within Voyager to see for myself firsthand what the cashback like and what the pros and cons would be of initiating more trading positions. But all right, well, I took the mic from you there for enough there, Pep. So I'll hand things back over because I know we're wrapping up. We only got a couple minutes left.
Hey, no worries. I talk plenty. I know everybody gets tired of hearing me, so all good. It's nice sitting back sometimes. But yeah, that about wraps up all the topics I have. But before we go, always thanks again everybody that's tuned in. Follow the VGX Heroes Twitter page. This is recorded on Crypto Airborne's YouTube, so we post over there later. I have a giveaway for NFT and $50 in ETH on my profile if you want to enter that. Thank you to the panel as always. I appreciate the education team. Check us out in the Discord. Anything you like to talk about, anything you want to hear. I mean, everything from equity, sports, VGX, other coins, arts. We got it all over there. So and we also transitioned to a new Discord. So if you're in the old, join the new. Come over there. We're adding stuff every day. Look out for the POAP NFTs heroes. We're gonna get that in the works for everybody. We wanna give y'all something. We just want to do it the right way. Make it so we're all good. Don't get any trouble. But I appreciate it as always. Catch us again next week, next Wednesday as always. But can we get some 100s for everybody in the panel and everybody that came up? There it is. Thank you. Come on, crowd. Come on. Yeah, there we go. We're getting some. But I appreciate it as always. Cut it out a few minutes early because we went long last week. But always got any questions throughout the week, shoot it in the Discord. We have a AMA chat. It helps us out having more preset topics and things. We want to answer everything you'll have for us. So get that information to us so we can be as best prepared as possible. But Floki, got any final thoughts?
Yeah. Next time I'd like to go into the mindset of an investor versus the mindset of a trader. So if there are any traders out there that want to push for trading and we get any holders out there to advise against trading, it'd be great to hear you guys talk and discuss positives and negatives there. Other than that, I hate to take away from all the education and all the awesome learning that we've all done here today, but let's just remember to get out there and have some fun and create some positive sentiment and some buzz for VGX and Voyager and support each other in positive, awesome, creative ways. And I'm just going to end it like that and say strength and honor. Have a great night, you guys. I'll see you next week.
See everybody.